I'm Eric Aden, your sheriff, honored to be your sheriff. This Faith in Blue is something that I heard about for the first time at a sheriff conference in 2020. Because this is a big event. The idea of this thing is to try and have immersion of our faith-based organizations mixed with a little bit of recruitment, mixed with immersion with students in our county, as well as business leaders and just the community in general. That's really the premise behind Faith in Blue. We have a level of professionalism, we have a level of trust from our community. Every new hire that comes in, I tell them this. This is the best place to be a cop in all of America. And I don't mean just the sheriff's office. Northwest Florida in general is lucky to have the law enforcement that we have, but we're just as lucky to have the public that we have.
I teach in the academy, and I have the privilege of seeing the young people just coming in, their first class, they're excited. One of the questions I always ask them, as a law enforcement officer, I want to ask you this. As a law enforcement officer dealing with the community, sometimes we deal with people that are obstinate, oppositional, and we got to get their attention. Is it ever okay for a law enforcement officer to use foul language to a member of the community to get their attention?
But a lot of times you can interact with people, law enforcement, who make you feel threatened because of just their demeanor. They're not personable. And they could be kind of the nicest people in the world, but for some reason, I guess they, when you put on all of that, it turns into this like superhero. And you could be a nice superhero. You could be, right. So if you sit there, then they make me want to respond different, even if I'm in trauma, even if it's a situation where I'm afraid or I may have done something and now I don't know what to do, and somebody approaches me and they're more personable, it could de-escalate the situation quicker.
In most cases in the professional environment, she's correct. You wouldn't have to use those kind of words to connect with somebody. Day to day, 97% of the time, a police interacting with a person is very professional, no need for that. But sometimes connecting with people could require the use of some colorful language.
I will tell you, there is a time and a place for it. Early in my career, I just responded to a domestic violence call with my partner. I went to the door, he went to the side. As I was about to, we were listening to see what we could hear. Small trailer, a female exited the trailer and went towards my partner. Right after the female exited the trailer, a male exited the trailer, coming up behind my partner with a butcher knife that was about that long. He had the butcher knife behind his leg, and he's stalking up behind my partner. He doesn't see me because I'm behind him. I draw my weapon. I'm about from here to Chad from him. I tell him to drop the knife. Instead of dropping the knife, he turns around very slowly, and he looks at me. And I told him again, I said, Niceville Police Department, that's where I worked at the time, drop the knife. Again, he doesn't drop the knife. What he does is he looks at me, and I can see his fingers, his hand white knuckling, grasping the knife tighter. I started taking the slack out of my trigger. I was going to shoot him. As I started squeezing my trigger, my partner stepped out from cover behind him, and I realized that if I missed him or my round over-penetrated, I was going to hit my partner. So I had to reposition myself. As I was doing that, I used foul language and told him a third time to drop the knife. And after I used that foul language and told him a third time to drop the knife, he threw the knife down on the ground and told me later that once I did that, he didn't believe I was going to shoot him until I used that foul language. And my using that foul language saved his life.
So when he was giving his story, the first 2 times he said it, the guy probably didn't believe him because he figured that out. But then when he said a cuss word, he was like, oh, he for real. So I think if I was watching that, it would be the same thing. I would not think less of him as an officer.
Like I said, it's no place for it to be a starting point. It shouldn't even be a middle point. It should be a point of last resort.
Back to my question, what does it show to they don't know who's involved. They're looking at a 10-second clip on Fox News or shared on Facebook. They hear the officer say drop the knife and then drops the F-bomb. What does the average viewer think about that officer? He's lost control. He's emotionally invested. The same dynamic that makes the guy think that it just got real, it just got serious, makes everybody else that has no dog in this hunt They've already got a negative perception of law enforcement. They watch a 5 or 10 second video, they hear it and they say he's just lost control of his emotions.
So I think.
Maybe it's not true, but that's the perception that now permeates the entire nation, right?
Because you just hit the nail on the head. You said that person started out with a negative perception of law enforcement. Where like, I don't have a negative perception necessarily. And so I just go, well, I mean, he was in a stressful situation. So I don't think anything less of them, but you like hit it when you said they already have a negative. And that just like furthers that preconceived notion, that negativity towards law enforcement.
We have to be very consciously aware of that. If I do a traffic stop on an individual, that might be my 15th traffic stop of the day on a traffic meter, right? Of that person, that might be their only traffic stop or interaction they have with law enforcement their entire life. And so we get one shot with that person to educate, to citate, to whatever it is we're going to do. I think citate's a word, is it? That's not. Education or citation is where I was going with that. But that's our one shot. You know, we train, we go through all the scenarios, we constantly challenge our people to think, put themselves in scenarios, go through these different things, but until they're put into those situations, it's hard to know how they're going to react. So I'm not going to train my people to try and hit somebody in the foot or the hand with a shoot. I'm going to get them to stop that threat. Our people have to be very dynamic thinkers. Okay, we demand that out of them. So where you guys are talking about the community about having honorable and loyal and integrity, some of the words you use, we expect so much more out of our guys because our job is so complicated.
Back in the early days, you know, it was a weakness to say, hey, I'm having a rough day, you know, or I just had a rough instant. I just dealt with a situation that's really kind of heavy on me. I don't think my head's in the game. That was a sign of weakness if I said, hey,
100%.
I probably need to decompress a bit. I think we've gone light years in that arena. We encourage people, and we're actually training supervisors and peers to be looking for opportunities to help one another. I mean, we talk about that in rookie school now in the first class. Personal wellness, mental health, wellness, and peer care.
Is there someone that you guys actually, that's on your staff that deal with that sort of deal?
But,
That gentleman on the wall right there
I'll say John
probably
Carter.
represents the greatest leap forward in wellness that I've experienced at the Sheriff's Office, is our chaplaincy program. And chaplain, I don't know if you'd like to speak to that a little bit, the wellness and resiliency.
My stock in trade is basically dealing with trauma. The average citizen in a lifetime may have 2 or 3 traumatic events. A law enforcement officer for 20 years will have upward of 800. 3 or 4 a day, going from deceased children to bodies whose body parts are now in different places. So the chaplain serves as a place to deal with those traumatic events. And we have processes to meet with those individuals, decompress, we debrief on certain occasions, but the chaplaincy is there to be there on their worst day, to listen, give them a safe place to vent. One of the cliches we use is a place where a deputy can take his trash, because he has to, or she has to feel safe that what they're about to say will not be betrayed. They can't take a safe time out. I'm gonna go home and then I'll come back tomorrow. There's another hot call waiting and a hot call after that. So our chaplains are trained to listen, to be compassionate, and give the deputy, the employee, a safe place to go.
so we've done a really good job, in my opinion, of recognizing that those traumas exist and being able to manage them as best we possibly can. So we're trying to do a lot to manage our own stresses and mitigate that stuff, so when they do have an interaction with you, they're in a clear headspace to do so. Chief, we have a policy that how we dictate. There is no policy how the public has to treat us. And I have to remind my guys all the time about that.
That is true.